Welcome to Insurance Technology Amplified, the podcast where we explore how innovation is transforming the insurance industry. This is the place where technology and expertise come together to empower agents, carriers, and the industry alike. Thank you for tuning in. Now, let's get to the show.
Ryan Deeds, how are you, man?
I'm good, brother. I'm good. It's been, I think we saw each other last at, that was a small conference, Jason Cass's conference.
Is that what it's so? I have like terrible conference EQ. Like it's kind of like golf courses. Like people remember, the fourth hole at Kiowa. I don't remember the hole. I don't remember, which course. I don't remember which show. I remember meeting you, which I enjoyed very much.
I think I still have your QR code on my phone that you gave me for an insurance gig.
That's proof that you ran into Michael at a conference.
That's right. That's right.
Listen. I'm leaving a little bit of a trail. Who was it? Hansel and Gretel.
That's right. That's right. Breadcrumbs, QR crumbs.
Breadcrumbs.
There you go.
QR crumbs. I like that.
Well, Ryan, let me introduce you to Adam Kiefer. He's one of the senior leaders on our team. He's running our commercial lines rating product, and we have an embedded wholesaler in the agency management platform, and Adam's in charge of that. And I guess, for this podcast forum, it's important Ryan, why don't you tell Adam and whoever's listening kind of who you are, what you do. I'd love to hear about your most recent gig. I know you moved recently. I'd like to hear about that.
Yeah, for sure. I'm Ryan Deeds. I've been in the space for about 25 years. I keep thinking that number's wrong, but he keeps being there. And so I started in 2001 at an agency. They were a retail broker. They were a Sajita shop. I got shunted into ETL and moving data from Sajita to dashboards and kind of grew up in that environment. I was lucky because the executive team brought me in really early. And so, a lot of times early aughts, IT was looked at as plumbing, but this agency looked at it as like an advantage. And so I was very tight with the revenue generation and perpetuation problems and all the stuff that independent agencies deal with. Then I moved to the Crichton Group. They were about $25 million in revenue. And I was there for 5 years. I was at Linear Upshaw for 10. So once I left, had a great time at Crichton. They're very innovative, very young leadership group that pushed innovation down. Because it's not about tech; it's about adoption, right? Like tech is everybody has tech, but how do you adopt differently? And we were able to do some cool things at Crichton that I learned from. Then went to Surex Global, ran data strategy there for 3 years. Then was at Enable for 4 years, was head of customer success there, and really helping agencies that I hadn't worked with before. Like I had been in mid-market and kind of larger agencies, but I hadn't dealt with small agencies, and I sure hadn't dealt with like super big agencies, and Enable got both of those. So how do they use data? What are they trying to do with data? And it's very different on the spectrums and the hygiene and all the different things. And so then at the end of my time at Enable, I got the opportunity to go work for Alchemy. And Alchemy is a 4-year-old agency. They come from 7 agencies that bonded together. They're about $300 million in revenue right now. We just crossed, 20 million, the like top 20 agencies across the nation. And I mean, what's badass about this place is like the leader, his name's Curtis. He's just a rebel. He's a rebel. He didn't want to like go the hub route. Like this is a dude that ran an agency, that grew up in an agency that was like, I'm tired of big aggregators coming in and taking all our effort. Like, why can't we have kind of a leader, like a servant leader driven kind of organization? And he talked a big game when I came there, when I was looking at going different places, I had a lot of opportunities. And, he had said like, look, man, you're going to come in here. You're going to be you. Just be you. That's all we want you to do. And it's been the coolest thing because, I mean, as you guys know, like this last 6 months, I think that we've seen more tactical application of technologies that accelerate stuff than anything else. And I wanted to go to a place where I could leverage some of that. And I'm talking specifically about AI assisted coding applications. Cursor is the tool that I use all the time. And I spend the vast majority of my life right now in Cursor building stuff. And so I'm a developer with developer chops and, know a lot of data architecture, but like I always hated messing with CSS or HTML. And those tools just really knock it out of the park for that. And I've spent probably 400 or 500 hours now, over the past 3 months, 4 months, building stuff with Cursor, and we have 3 or 4 primary applications that we've built. And I think the world's different. I think it's going to be a different environment when you can speak something and it just becomes reality. I think we've seen like small bits of that down earlier, but nothing like we're going to see with hyper customized software being built for very specific use cases that embed into the user's journey better than kind of purchase software has been. And that's what I've been doing, man. And so it's been cool, man. It really has been, to get back nerdy as hell, spending all my time in JSON and, API calls and all that stuff. And, being very business aligned with the producers. We've created a sales portal, and that's really what I've been working on, is a producer portal. That's 90% of the time that I've spent here has been building that. So that's kind of what I'm doing, Mike.
So, in that short little message, I wrote down 3 or 4 questions and, things that I want to jump on. So from an AI perspective, which, even though like this podcast is not necessarily named an AI podcast, but it really is an AI podcast, focusing on, I like our clever little tagline, which is AI for IAs, which is kind of, how we approach it. And we're also investing a significant amount of time, resource, energy, capital into AI. And I haven't spent a lot of time in Cursor, which, we're using, I think, one of the alternatives, which is Lovable, very similar. Have you ever played around with Lovable?
I've used Bolt mainly. I've used Pine a little bit, but I spent the vast, because I used to do it the old way, right? Like have ChatGPT write it for me and then paste it over into the IDE and edit it away. And with Cursor, I mean, it just accelerated it. Like, I built an old website in December before I had Cursor. It took me 7 days, like, to build a website that was very simple, looks good and all that jazz. I would have knocked that thing out in like a day with Cursor.
Yeah,
like,
it's amazing. And
it is, man. And I don't know. I think it just changes the dynamic because we're so early on. Like, vibe coding kind of has a bad vibe thing right now.
Can you define vibe coding for me? Can you explain vibe coding to me like I am a slow to learn 4th grader?
Yeah, I mean, vibe coding is where you have an idea, and before you didn't have the technical ability to be able to bring it to fruition. And now, using modern tools that you can kind of talk to, you can have it build it for you. Like, I have written, a line of code or 2 here, but I've got thousands and thousands of lines of code I've never written because I just tell the IDE this is what I need and we iterate over it. And so vibe coding allows you to bring a quick idea to prototype it. Sometimes you're like, yep, that was a terrible idea. And sometimes you're like, hey, this has some legs. And it allows you to iterate very rapidly. The more technical you are, the better I think your underlying product can be. Because I do think you can get in some trouble even with the stuff that I have. I'm like, how the hell am I going to maintain all this? I do see it as the way of the future because it does create so much ability for you just to create whatever you want, whenever you want it, instead of me going to you and buying a product from you, Mike, and then you figuring out how to put it into my organization and us spending 4 months on an implementation plan. When Sally has this one problem, I can just build it for Sally, work it exactly. Like, we've integrated AI into our email system. So now you can just ask, AI at askalc.com. You can ask it a question in email and it'll email back to the user because where are our users? They're in email. So how do you lower that barrier as quickly as possible? You put a mechanism there that allows them to interface with it. And so, that was one of the first concepts that I'd kind of had here. But vibe coding is ultimately that. It's non-technical ability to bring product to fruition in a way that
Is there anything inherent about vibe coding that means it's collaborative? Because I've heard somebody explain it to me, like, vibe coding is usually, or can be, when 2 or more people get together and they iterate. Or is vibe coding just more of like exactly what you're doing in Cursor or what we do in Lovable, which is an idiot like me?
I think it's that more than co-coding, like more than like having, 2 people sitting next to each other. I do feel it's collaborative because that, like, Cursor, you can choose the model that you use. So if I'm doing like an easy problem, I'll use, Gemini 2.5, where I'll use, Claude 3.7 max if I really have a large context issue, or if I didn't break up my code the right way and is having a hard time finding which line to edit, And so, but no, I think I spend the vast majority of my day talking to whatever cursor model I'm using to help me through that. And I feel it's extremely collaborative. It's weird though, because you got to really know how to talk to these things, and you have to be comfortable with it. And when people watch me do it, they're like, you just learn how to do it over time,
What is it like? What do you think and this is a non-insurance question, but like, what do you think the future of engineering is in that context, right? I mean, like, are kids still going to school for computer science degrees, or is it a different skill set?
I don't know. I mean, I have a hard time with it, because I think really when you think about it, if you have business acumen and technical ability is removed from the equation, right? The technologists of the future are the ones that are closely aligned to the business and have creative problem solving ability. I mean, that's, communication. So like for the standard engineer that comes out, and it's funny because engineers have been relatively reticent to embrace this technology. I know a couple engineers that are like, I don't use that. I'm like, okay, that's fine. Like we should have a hackathon and see who comes out with a better product at the end of 2 days. Cause and so I think it's funny because it was not the first job that we thought would be kind of outmoded. And as we can see across the alphabets, across all the big companies, engineering talent is going to be massively reduced over time to this. And AI is learning how to code more and more effectively every day. It's like we're like year one. Like we're just so baby into this. That's when people are like, oh,
it's really insane.
Coding is bad. But it's like, bro, you're just starting.
So I want to take a step back before we dig deep for a moment, just to give me the context. And, I got to give a shout out to Stacy King, our global head of marketing, because she has this podcast process as such a well-oiled machine where an invite went out, you got the link, I checked the calendar, I saw, oh, awesome, it's Ryan Deeds that we're talking to today. I had heard recently on LinkedIn, or I saw some post that you had left Enable, and I'm excited to learn what Alchemy is. And, I really don't have much context. So let's jump into that for a minute. Tell me about Alchemy. What do you guys do? What's your value prop? Because I don't have much exposure to it, and I'd like to.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Alchemy is trying to define all those as well. I mean, ultimately, Alchemy is a agency that comes from kind of a small mom and pop shops that all came together to say, hey, now we want to go and start using our own, PE-backed money to be able to go acquire agencies. And they started that journey about 3.5 years ago, and they've acquired 57 agencies since that time period, with an average agency size of about $1.5 million, $2 million in revenue. And so, we have a lot of operational challenges as our team grows, as we try to find the right agencies, because again, we're not looking for every agent. We're looking for ones that really resonate with Curtis and his mindset. I mean, he'll tell you stories about when he was a kid, mopping the floors at an agency. That's a leader that I want to work for. Somebody who's trains the trash cans, has done those things in an agency. And so, our goal right now is to find agencies that have significant opportunity to grow, that have been kind of hit with operational challenges, then kind of come in, figure out what is their special sauce, what do we need to marry them up with in Alchemy. So you're a benefits agency and you really haven't cross-sold commercial. Well, you have a huge organic, growth potential if you can cross-sell commercial into that benefits book. And just in the inverse is true as well. And so a lot of our stuff for my year one is really focusing on sales operations. How do we identify opportunities? How do we we have 340 producers. I've never worked with 340 producers. I mean, that is a ton of producers, and they're all, you've got some PL producers, some commercial lines producers, some very niche producers. Each agency is a little bit different. So it's a lot of learning about those agencies and how we can get them to synergize together. And we are trying to run lean, and so, but the leadership team is really great. Everybody's open to learning, but ultimately it's a full service brokerage where we have a couple niches. Our biggest niche is probably auto right now. And we're putting all of our data together.
Personal, commercial.
Well, the vast majority of the revenue is going to be commercial, right? The vast majority of your clients are going to be personal. Right. This is how it works.
Right. So
And we are
when you talk about auto, was that personal auto or commercial?
commercial auto. Well, it's really an auto niche where we deal with auto manufacturers, auto dealers, auto part suppliers. Like we have a
Okay.
pretty nice industry specific vertical that NAICS based, right? Going after those type of risks. We have good carrier partners there, and a lot of times that's the agencies that we'll buy too. Is if we see an agency that's niched out, that'll command a higher premium because it's better business. I mean, it's better business than being a generalized agency, and so a lot of vertical specialties is kind of what we're trying to drive to over this next 12 months.
So as a partner in an agency management system, or as we prefer right now, an agency management platform, I would be remiss if I didn't start like kind of peeling back the layers of, did you guys go with a kind of legacy, according to Hoyle agency management system? Or as you kind of said, hey, we want to approach this in a new way, did you just say, hey, we're going to do this from scratch? At its core, you said 340 producers, you've got 57 agencies. Is there an agency management system that you're using at its core at Alchemy?
Yeah, I mean, we use Epic as our mothership. That's what we would call it. And so in Epic, what we do is when we acquire an agency, if they're on a modern AMS or one that Enable can connect to, the first thing that we do is connect Enable to that. Enable then normalizes that data. They're outside of Epic at that point in time. They're on their own AMS. No change management has occurred in the agency, but all that data is now sitting on Enable, normalized, straightened up, ready to rock and roll. So I can use it. We can use it. The agency can use it. Once they hit their conversion window, so hey, depending on the size, it takes different amounts of time because if you got 30 employees, it's much harder than if you have 3, right? So then once they convert over into Epic. And so I think we have more than half of our agencies in Epic, but we're slotted to pick up, 30, 40 agencies this year. And so we're really trying to figure out, how do we continue to streamline M&A? And make that a easier pill to swallow, where it doesn't eat everybody's life. So.
We'll discuss it offline when we're not being recorded and broadcast, but definitely want to kind of take a look at that and see if we could collaborate and bring value, to that part of the process. But
Yeah.
We'll take that offline. So
how are you, Michael, if I could,
yeah,
it's an interesting concept using Enable to kind of pull agency stuff in that way. Are you able to do that at all during the M&A process, like part of the due diligence process? I just think there's some interesting space around there where you can kind of see the agency a little better and not just rely on
obviously,
QuickBooks spreadsheets, right?
Enable and Alchemy have a very close relationship, right? I mean, they're a large client of ours, and the fact that I'm here doesn't hurt, right? And so they're actually you can sign up for Enable to do due diligence reporting if you're an M&A person, and they will go, as long as you have access to that entity's data, right? As long as in the LOI and all that stuff, you can figure it out.
Right,
Enable will
right.
do exactly that. Hey, I was looking at an Enable report on due diligence for 2 of our acquisitions today, and it's like, hey, 78% of the premium goes direct. This much goes indirect. Here's what the average producer size is. Here's what the average tenure of the client is.
Okay.
Here's what population values, the population density of these different fields are. Because, again, as we analyze an agency with really great data may command a higher multiple than an agency that has crappy data. I mean, if we've got to backfill in a ton of different stuff before we can really get you ramped up to drive organic growth, that's not going to be as impactful as, hey, you've got all your ducks in a row, you did the investments, you have the data processes in place, and you can tell me exactly who's monoline. You can tell me who needs to be cross-sold. You can tell me what lines of coverage you have and don't have. I mean, and so I think it's an interesting challenge, but yeah, we are using it for due diligence right now, and it's speeding us up for sure. And then we use it for pre-merge, and then we use it for post-merge as well. So.
Can you use it? And I'm just not familiar with all the tools within the Enable system, but does it have, I guess, efficiency kind of measurements in there where you can kind of understand what's the premium per employee and things like that, where you could kind of find gains? Or
you can. I mean, it just depends on how. It depends if the agency has populated their estimated revenue effectively. Sure, right?
Right.
Like I'm always going to caveat that kind of subjective metric based on data quality, right? And is that really what you're trying to measure for? Um, but it does allow us, I don't have to do any data architecture, at least on that side of it, right?
Yeah.
Agency comes in, the data shows up in their data marts. I extract every night from their data marts down to Mongo, and then I do whatever I want with it, and, they have 312 columns on an enable policy record. So that's like, is it renewal? Is it a rewrite? Like they have all this built-in logic that's
Right.
right there into it that really allows you as a data person to translate that to value as quickly as possible without doing a lot of like most of my time was spent on ETL, right? Like how do I connect?
Yeah.
How do I get it over? How do I normalize it? And the fact
Yeah.
that it normalizes product and carrier instantly out the gate. So if you call workers' comp WC, workers' comp, workers' compensation,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
industry standard is, at least our enables is commercial space hyphen, workers' compensation. And so
Right.
everything is normalized to that, which is awesome. I mean, so it just makes it so much easier to be able to move fast.
That is such a, I mean, the data in the industry, right? I mean, it sounds so simple, but you're right. I mean, you have 100 agencies. You probably have, I mean, how many different ways have they put travelers insurance into the
A
system, right? How many
million,
different ways do they have
literally a
worked on that?
million.
Yeah. Yeah. It's,
Yeah.
it's
And not only that, I mean, think about the subsidiaries underneath travelers. Because if I go and tell
right.
most agencies to pull a traveler's book, they're not going to capture everything.
Right.
And enable, because it does roll it up, it identifies that subsidiary, gets the NAIC for that parent and the ultimate parent. So then when I want to talk to them about, hey, this is our totality of our relationship, I pull at the ultimate parent level. If I'm talking to local underwriter, here's what we have with you guys. And it makes it very, very straightforward. And, for them, if your payee and your insurer are the same, your ultimate parent's the same, you have a direct relationship. If it's different, you have an indirect relationship. So target the indirects, figure out how do you roll that up onto 3 or 4 wholesalers. I mean, there's a lot of ways then you can really execute on the data instead of trying to prepare the data.
Yeah, absolutely.
Talking about like the data and it being normalized, and you guys are sounds like you're a very forward-thinking, advanced agency. But let's kind of think about a smaller producer, a smaller group, 1 to 5 people. Still, maybe like your ideal acquisition target, somebody with $2 million in. You said it was $2 million in revenue or $2 million in premium. $2 million revenue.
I mean, yeah, bigger shops have gone through a lot of pain already.
So one of the things that we see constantly, especially the ones that are coming to us from other groups, it's kind of like, spring cleaning, right? Okay, we're going live on a new agency management system. Let's get all of our data in order. Let's normalize it or clean it up. And then you have this like, ground zero day where everything is pristine and pure. And then, you come back 30 days later, the data is no longer pristine and pure. Now, it's not because the system. It's from a fat finger governance, lack of compliance.
It's from a government standpoint. It's because you don't do data audits. You don't give it back to the user when they enter improper things, because that shit is hard. I mean, it's hard to do that, right? Like that's how we always have tried to look at that. Is like I think account managers try their hardest to comply to all the rules that you have. But when you have 17 rules and that account manager has a producer behind them trying to get a renewal done, trying to just get everything in the system that they can, and then 3 months later we look at their data and we're like, hey, your data's crappy. That is not on that account manager. That is on the leadership team for not providing a mechanism for that account manager to see day after what's going on in the system. 100%. If they've provided that mechanism and not a month-end exception report where that account manager has to go in and bang it all out. I mean, like when they log in, they should be able to see, hey, these are the 15 things that we kind of found wrong with the stuff you entered yesterday. Once you do that 3 or 4 times, like you laugh, but I've seen that work. I mean, I've seen it work at Crichton. When we brought it into Crichton, we had a dashboard, 17 audits on it, and that'd be like active expired policies. Policies that are still in binder status, right? But, there's like a bunch of these things that would be complied to. If it wasn't complied to, it'd go to the manager. I mean, obviously you need accountability, you need a lot of stuff. But the first thing you need is an alerting system to the account manager on what they did wrong the next day or as soon as possible. If you don't have that, it's not on the account manager. That's how I feel.
How are you dealing with that at Alchemy with 340 producers? And are you leveraging AI? Is that something on your list and your roadmap to deal with?
Not right now, because I mean, with our shop, with as quickly as we've moved, when we're 4 years in, 57 agencies, we're not quite ready to have like full centralized workflows. I mean, that we want to get to that place, and we will get to that place. But it's right now our goal is sales engine, sales clarity, sales purpose. How do we track that effectively? How do we give everybody kind of accountability to that? And that is the producer portal. And then, as we kind of solidify some of the larger acquisitions that we've had, how do we take the rules that we have in place? And I mean, if you have a rule set, you can create an audit. The audit's the easy part of it. It's more like, who's defining the rules? How many exceptions are there? How do you treat PL versus high net worth, or some mid-market account versus small commercial? And what are the rules for each one of those? And typically that's held very close to the vest of the individuals that are working in it, not because they're being protectionist, just because they've never had to figure out how to scale that. So I think like in 26, we'll be working on scaling that more effectively. But, I think as easy as estimated revenue. Like, estimated revenue is the number one metric that every agency should use that no agency uses, because it's hard to manage, it's hard to maintain. And so but it is by far the most, you get the most out of it by putting the work into it.
Yeah, one thing I want to share with you, I'm going to share my screen. I'll say this is not ready for prime time yet, even though I'm broadcasting it. One of the things that we've done is, we call this kind of like our internal operating system, or like the operating system of an agency. And we've basically broken out, okay, you think about within the day-to-day operations, like these are the 6 core functions of an agency. You've got reporting, finance and accounting, operations, servicing, quoting, rating and binding, and sales. And then if you go into each one of them, so if you click into sales, these are the 4 key functions of sales: new business contact management, pipeline management, X-date. And then as you go into it, okay, for new business contact management, here's like kind of the parent-child relationship. And we've basically broken down the entire agency operation into 165 different workflows. And, with very specific steps, along the way, to be able to say, okay, this agency that we're buying only uses 120, but they should be using 140. It's basically taken like this very homogenized, agency operations, and which is a very subjective thing to different people. And we're trying to like objectify it in a way. We're trying to standardize it to say like, okay, let's come up with this common language that we could take across our entire platform.
Best practices almost, right?
Exactly. And it's a way to kind of enforce best practices. And so like, even if you get it into it over here, so now that you clicked into assess new business leads, well, here's the objective, here are the step-by-step, here's what you got to click on in the AMS. And then we're actually able to track the click path of who actually did click in the right places to get to this goal. And it's kind of like a, I don't want to say a whole new approach, but it's basically like, it's kind of like mapping like the human DNA. To understand, why certain things are happening. And it's something that really seems to be resonating with agents.
Well, I mean, I think like it's funny because I think we've gone back to this place of simplicity now. Like it used to be a lot of options, one out. Now I don't think that's the case. I think it's clarity of what do you do to drive a result. And so, if you guys have the cookbook to, hey, here's the result, and if these are the 4 actions you take to get there, and now you can metric that out. I mean, I think that's exactly what people are looking for. I think one of the great things about Enable is it does all kinds of stuff. One of the bad things about Enable is it does all kinds of stuff. And so, I train and so for our products that we build internally, it's really trying to figure out like, what is the 1, 2, 3 result? So you're successful in that product or you're not successful in that product. Like, how do you have one of those feelings coming out of there? And I think if you can have all those workflows monitored out and, then yeah, that would work really well. I think it's hard. You guys are you kind of started at a tabula rasa when we have, things in flight, trying to figure out how all that works together. Like you got a lot of humans that have to come together and talk, and that takes a lot of time and consensus and all that jazz. But no, I love the concept of it for sure.
What was that expression you used? We're starting from the what you call it? A tabula rasa? What was that?
Tabula rasa, just a blank slate.
I never heard that.
Yeah,
You learn something new every day.
every day.
So now that you've kind of explained at a super high level, kind of what Alchemy's, mission statement is, objective, what you're looking to accomplish. So now let's jump back into some of the practical use cases of AI. I'd love to understand, like,
Best one, Mike. One that I'm dying for, brother. I haven't had. I mean, right now I'm buried, but it's on my. I got three things ahead of it. But okay, one of the problems that every agency faces is carrier knowledge. Like, hey, here's 37 emails for carriers, right? So again, I framed out the vast majority of this. I use AI assistants depending on what it is. I'm really trying to migrate to Mistral, which is a different model that in Azure that's very cheap, easily trainable. Right now, I will use an OpenAI AI assistant. And so, if you think about it, hey, who are your primary carriers that you really care about? Every time you get a notification from a carrier, it gets emailed to Python that then takes it apart if it's in PDF or whatever, ultimately gets the text, sends that text over to AI summarizes it, comes back to you. Like, that to me is an extremely practical, very valid use case for AI. Here's your summary. Here's the carriers that matter summary for the week. Here's the carriers that didn't really matter summary for the week, right?
Well, and from an output perspective, and I'd say this is one of the things that we're working on, and internally we call it Alexandria. It's like the wealth of the world's knowledge, right? And that means a lot of things. That's our company platform knowledge on how to train a customer to use our system, and it's market appetite questions of like who wants to write comp in Florida, and then it's also traditional just straight up P&C knowledge. Like the example I always give is like, hey, my pool overflowed and my my storage shed was wrecked. Am I covered or not? That sort of stuff. But then there's like you said, the proprietary carrier knowledge. Hey, I had a flat cancel with Travelers, and what's their policy? Carrier specific policy. So. We're working on appetites. But that's one of the things that we're working on, and Ryan, I'd love to collaborate on that.
I mean, it's funny though. Like today, it's like in 18 hours, you could create a system that ingested it, spitted it back out. I mean, would it be every security check in there, good, bad, or ugly, right? But it would be business, because again, what you're looking for, at least from this on my side of it, is business alignment, not product, not technology. Does this solve the business problem that you addressed in the most simple way possible, right? Like, and a lot, like people were like, why would you go to email on AI? I'm like, because that's where people are, and it's not sexy, it's not cool, but it's async.
That's a delivery mechanism. It's just an input. It's a delivery mechanism.
That's it. But it's so ever present. I've seen people pick up on that would never use a prompt, because my first idea was like centralized prompt, one prompt, multi kind of engines in the back, because right now I have an intent AI. The main thing that we use AI here for today, aside from coding, is email intent. When an email comes in, because then I don't have to have 10 paths. Like, email comes in, I'm looking for this industry. Okay, well, they're looking for an industry. It goes to another AI model that then has all the industry knowledge. So it kind of acts in that capacity. But I think that things are so fast today. Like, it's so quick.
They are. But again, I'm not going to argue with you, but I'll be the devil's advocate with you and say, yeah, like if you, threw caution to the wind and you went and you did it and you spent 18 hours, you'd have this incredibly, viable proof of concept ready to go. But, let's layer now the real world on top of it. So, how do we do this for multiple carriers? How do we do it where we have, the agent's permission to use certain data? How do we, one of the things that, I'll say it's one of the common objections that comes in from some of the people working on our product is the validation of things. Like, they want to make sure that we're not using crappy inputs to teach the model. So like there's this validation step to say, this was a good question and this was a good response. I'm hoping at some point, I believe it'll be there where AI could self-validate.
Yeah.
I'm sure
And ours are
someone's
much
figured it out.
more, right now, ours are much more guided, right? Because if you ask a question, then we're kind of reframing that question to be specific to insurance and make sure all the guardrails are on there. I think for the carrier thing, though, I mean, when you think about it, what the business problem is, we get 500 pieces of email from the carrier every week that we're supposed to keep up with, and then Chubb just released a product that we actually care about that we could have taken advantage of, but because there's so much noise, we missed that.
Yeah.
How do we isolate down on that when they're sending it? We're over inundated with input, right? What we need is clean output that's tactical and actionable. And so, but no, I have concerns about tech debt. I have concerns about maintainability, manageability. And I mean, so does Alchemy. And so, I mean, it's something that we're definitely looking at. But Mike, I'm always down to collaborate with you, man.
Comes down to resource prioritization.
Yeah, time. A lot of time, man.
Okay, give me what's number 2 on your list?
I mean, I think there's an untapped. Depends on the size of the agency. I think in many cases, like for us, how do we connect people more rapidly together inside of the organization? So who knows what, when, and where? I'm a commercial lines producer in California that's writing a trucking risk in Pennsylvania. How do I determine if Alchemy has a trucking risk in Pennsylvania expert that I can lean on to help me through that and accelerate that? That's a very easy kind of mechanism once you have, like, so in the portal that we've built, everybody kind of indicates their expertise. Obviously, we pull from data as well, but self-reported expertise is a good thing to have. And so that then allows those folks to kind of get connected very rapidly together. And I think that's a big one. I think there's a ton that are there, Mike. I think it's more about actionability. I mean, I've put together POCs on how do you write up draft emails that are hyper customized to clients, where you're not really sending in like it's like the state that they live in, the risk that they, the line of coverage that they have in the industry. Send me back a template that is hyper customized to this individual, so I'm not having to blast out the exact same thing to everybody. Where this will say, hey, you're a restaurant in this place, and that's not in production today. That's a test that we ran. We didn't love the output enough to put it in production, but it was also like 10 to 12 hours. I mean, it wasn't like a lot of work together.
Right.
And so again, it was like, as I was trying to illustrate to them, like the things that we can do. And then I think there's fun stuff. I mean, I don't know if you play with Notebook LM, but like,
yeah,
I mean, God damn, my girlfriend stays on that. She was writing history books on this one town in Oklahoma, and she uses it to create narratives of these characters. And I mean, it's like, and I think policy summaries that way, delivered that way, could be extremely powerful, and I think
nice.
I mean, they're like I did when I did a lemonade policy that I had back in the day and ran it through there. I never read a freaking insurance policy. I've been in insurance 20 years. But I sure did listen to the 35-minute podcast that it created for these two people that were talking back and forth about my policy. And I felt like they were talking to me. And it took 3 minutes for AI to create that. So would I be worried about like E&O on that? Sure. Could you also put something on the front end and say, hey, if you have a question about anything that's in here, call your agent. Her name is Sally. She's at this office. She loves to talk to you. This is more of a generic, general thing for you, And so I think fear will hold a lot of agencies back from doing a lot of this stuff. I'm just lucky that I'm in an agency that doesn't have a whole lot of fear and has a lot of legal help. And I've got some people that are keeping me straight on the security side. Victor.
How do you see voice
cool with
AI?
That expertise piece that you were talking about, Michael. Sorry.
Yeah, go.
So I worked for Wells Fargo Insurance for a little bit, which was enormous, and we can talk about them because they don't really exist anymore, right? But that was like always one of their value props is that like we've got producers that specialize in everything all across the country, but there was no practical way of actually like talking to any of those people, right? Like, and so if you can actually centralize that data and go, yeah, like Ryan actually does know trucking in Pennsylvania, and here's an easy way to get in touch with him, or here's some information that he's put together, right? Like, that's fascinating because I mean, all agencies have this huge wealth of knowledge, but it's hard to get it around.
Well, I think that's another route. I mean, when you think about a real problem to solve, Mike, with AI is knowledge perpetuation through account managers. Like, create a program where an account manager's last 2 years, they get paid out additional if they transfer X amount of knowledge over to this model. They get paid another bonus after they complete that based on the quality of the input. After 10 years, that one asset would be your largest.
Well,
You
I
would,
mean, so to counter that, I personally think you're not going to need it. So like what we're seeing happen over here, and I'm sure you're doing it too, every bloody call is being recorded on Fireflies and on Zoom.
sure.
So like there will be no intellectual property or knowledge base of information that exists in your mind that will not exist in a digital form, right? Because you might have some independent thought, but every communication about this policy with this customer to the insured, related to the COI, is going to be memorialized and is going to be there. So maybe now there will be a short period of time where all these AI immigrants that don't come over. But if an agent started today on the platform that we're using, like it's going to be there.
I'm talking
Uh,
more institutional knowledge, not so much transactional, but like, how much do you know about this vertical? Like, when you lose a person that's 55 or 60 out of an agency that's been working in social services for their entire career, the people that they knew, the relationships they had, their ability to solve problems, like, I think that is the thing that's lost. Some of the transactional items are, and I don't disagree with you, Mike. I think most of that can probably be elicited down the stretch, as things, because what I am seeing is AI is forcing everybody to go to better standardized APIs, right? Because if you're not in the API game today, it's because you can supercharge anything now if you have good API connections. And so, I don't know. I've always thought about, now we have a labor shortage in our space. It's going to get worse and worse. And I imagine that the virtual employee like that will be something that somebody tries. I'll be curious.
one other thing that I don't want to say we're dabbling with, but where we've jumped into the deep end, but we're iterating and we're approaching it slowly, is like the lead business. The number one thing, if you go survey agents, and we've surveyed many, the number two ask is, I want digital market access. The number one is like, give me leads, like make my phone ring, make it
I
ring.
know, but I mean, those are like agencies that are typically targeting PL or small commercial accounts, like, right? I mean, you're not selling mid-market account, because I mean, we're doing a lot of lead stuff too. I think
Yeah.
it's more of an excuse remover for producers. Like, I can't sell without leads. Here's your leads. Oh, I can't sell without my edge. Here's my edge. I can't sell without this thing. Okay. So,
Well, the point that, and the reason why I'm bringing it up is because one of the things that we discovered, and you're right, when it comes to like the chum of the internet and like the shit that people buy for $40 a pop, yeah, those are personal line stuff and small commercial for sure, right? A $2,000 multifamily unit is not trading. The CFO is not filling out a lead. He's talking
right,
to his guy Gallagher or whatnot.
right.
But the point that I'm making is that like we started putting together like a P2P exchange, right? Again, it's more for that small commercial, which is very much what you spoke about, of like how to connect your producers on internal knowledge, like who's the work comp expert, for auto manufacturing type thing. And it's the same type of concept, and what you're talking now with social services also, like like I have a buddy of mine who does life insurance, but he's like, I could do your health too, but when I call him for health, he just puts me in touch with his guy, and like they split the commission, and
Right.
the guy knows I can never try to circumvent this guy. And we're putting together that same P2P across independent agents, and again, I think a lot of that, the
Well, I
matching
think it's a
schema.
badass idea. I mean, I think it's an awesome idea for an AMS to be able to do that, because I think one of the powers of the independent is your size and your ability to act nimbly. But a limitation is your ability to get connected to somebody else that might do that quickly without joining one of these brain shares that I just feel like are predatory almost on most of the independent agencies that are out there. I mean, there are so many of these, join this group and become a sales guru. I mean, most agencies are under $1 million in revenue, right? We got 35,000-ish agencies in America. 4,000 of those are above $1 million in revenue. The rest are below. And so I think those are the targets that a lot of the brain share folks and those groups go after. But I would love that. I mean, I think it's a great concept, man. Like if you could opt into that, Mike, like, hey, I want to opt into knowledge sharing, and I happen to be good at, high net worth coastal property in Florida, and I'll be a part of the.
But Ryan, you got to be a momentum agent, though.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I mean, I think it's cool, but I think that's a cool value add for momentum, as a value, for sure, especially with the size of clients that you guys are typically dealing with. I mean,
listen, I'm new-ish to momentum. I think at 24 months I have to stop saying that, but it's convenient for me because I get to brag about it, when I wasn't the author. And the thing that Peter has really accomplished is like they really listen. And we've listened, customers have said and it comes back down to like this thesis of we want to help the agent stop saying no.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, I don't know. I'm sure you're a member of a bunch of those agency groups, and so many of them are constantly looking for, like, I'm a part of Insurance Soup, which I love. I think it's a great group on Facebook. But every day you see 50 agencies ask, and they're all smaller agencies, typically captives that have come over to independence, but they're asking like, hey, where can I get coverage for this, or what carrier writes that? And I'm like, man, like if Momentum had that, like that would be a value add, because those guys are entertaining Easy Links and Hawksoft and now, I mean, all the different ones in that tranche, and so. Because I had actually approached those guys about when I was at Enable to say, hey, look, can we put a program together for you where you could go in and kind of figure that out using the Enable tool, said it ever went anywhere. But I thought that was a very big value add. So if you had that and then the knowledge thing, like, I don't know, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's interesting. Like you just sparked an idea. We kind of do it internally where it's not all that glamorous. Like we built this whole UI where you could go, because we have a ton of our sales reps, our bougie way of, we call them success concierges, which are bougie way of saying like our account execs. And calls come in every day. And I've noticed that the same bloody question is asked time and time again. And someone's got to go learn it and research it. It's like, hey, this knowledge is there. And it's no different than market access, or it's no different from carrier, rules and regulations. And we have a UI that we built internally, but we also we integrated into an internal Slack channel, and maybe we should expose that.
I mean, I think so, because you think about one of the biggest, like that. If you go look at that Insurance Soup, you'll see a bunch of people saying, "Hey, I have a risk that I want to write for a partner in. I've got a client that has a house in Florida. I'm not licensed there, right? So like." If part of Momentum's kind of value prop was we're not just going to, provide technology, but we're going to connect you with peers that you want to be connected to, right? Yep. Allow you to leverage their benefits of that. I mean, I don't know, that a lot there kind of gets me excited, Mike. That's cool stuff.
Yeah, we're super excited about it, and we've got some big things coming as it pertains to our leads and this P2P network. So. Stay tuned on that. Ryan, I want to be mindful of time. We're approaching the 5-minute mark, or the 5 p.m. mark. Distill this down. If you had a chance, to have like a little bit of a time capsule, or maybe that's the wrong way, like a message in a bottle, like right now to one of the 31,000 independent agents that are probably not familiar with Cursor and what a RAG is, or they don't know what an MCP is. If you went, and you're obviously very astute when it comes to these things. And I think people get intimidated. I think there's a sense of being overwhelmed and I don't know where to start, and maybe it's analysis paralysis, but, distill it down. If we had 31,000 agents, listening in on a webinar right now saying, Ryan, help me out, like point me in the right direction. How should I be thinking about AI for my business and my agency? Like, I'm overwhelmed. What do I do? How do I start? What would you tell them?
Probably tell them don't worry about AI. Rethink your purchasing process of technology. Be able to identify the problem that you're trying to solve for. Be able to talk through, when you bring that solution in, what is your expectation and what is your metric of success for that solution, and what is your expectation and metric of success for failure. Though just doing that, Just having the forethought to do that before you get caught up in the shiny ball syndrome will change the way that your agency operates, and it will make you innovative over a couple of years. Because every time you buy something and churn it, you kill innovation in your shop. You train your users not to use that stuff. AI is a tool. It's a cool tool, does a lot of neat stuff. But to be honest, so many of the agencies that I see have terrible purchasing mechanisms in the way that they buy technology, and they underutilize technology, and they don't think about how it's supposed to be done. And I kind of always preach that. I mean, there's a lot of practical applications to start getting ready with AI. But if you're just buying software the way you always have and figuring out that, hey, this didn't do what I expected it to do, change that process a little bit, more for front-end thinking. Think about, what is that solution supposed to do for you? Communicate that to the team. If it doesn't do this in 6 months, we're getting rid of it. Communicate that to the team. Like, that stuff will help you become more innovative, and you'll be able to adopt any of this new crap that comes out. Because AI is the flavor now. I mean, it'll be there for a while, but we're going to go through multiple iterations of it. And I can understand why people feel overwhelmed, because I mean, I think every thought leader out there is screaming at them saying, you're missing the boat. And it's not the truth.
Also, you can't keep up. I mean, I feel like I'm pretty, up to date. And then like every day there's a new AI release. Like nobody heard, I don't want to say nobody, 0.0001% of the population knew what a RAG was 90 days ago.
Oh, I know.
And then, DeepSeek didn't exist, and now DeepSeek became the best. And the next day, it was Alibaba launched one that they, put it.
And I think you got to get rid of all that. Yeah, like that's all hype bullshit. Like, how does that shit apply to your organization? Does it solve a problem? If you don't have a problem that it can solve for, don't worry about the hype train. Because I think most people are bullshitting. I mean, most people are like, oh, we've done. What I do think you're going to have is a glut of bad companies that come forward in this next 18 months that build very shoddy product very rapidly behind AI powered.
Right,
tools.
but even so, and maybe like I misled the notion, but even concepts of like deep research, like didn't exist. Now it's a thing. Agentic AI, like that didn't exist, and now it's a thing.
But I would just say focus on your business. You most of these guys have been successful for a while, right? If you're pushing 400,000 or 500,000, 600,000 in revenue, you've been doing it for a couple of years. You know what the problems are. It's not like you got to go say, "Hey, I need to implement AI to fix like fundamentals," and then you can get fancy. That's I'm not a big go buy tech. I'm actually don't buy tech probably, because you probably don't need it unless you've analyzed your reasons. So it's not the greatest answer, but that's my answer.
I know. Listen. Every discussion that we have starts with, what's your problem statement?
Yeah.
And we started, almost like a Reddit upvote thing. Here's our list of top 100 insurance agency problem statements. Like, which ones apply to you? Yep. Which is an interesting approach. Anyway, Ryan, you rock, brother. I appreciate the time.
It's good to meet you.
You too, brother.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Insurance Technology Amplified. Be sure to stay connected and up to date by following Momentum AMP on all social networks. For show notes, resources, and details on upcoming episodes, visit our podcast page at momentumamp.com/podcast. We look forward to having you join us next time. Take care and see you soon.